Hello, everybody. It's 2:16 a.m. Central Time on the 27th of September, 2022. It is now Tuesday here in the United States. Hope you are doing well. Just getting on to do an update for everybody. It's been a few days since my last update. Wanted to show you what's going on. We have some activity over on the west coast of the United States. Major outbreak west of Europe, up next to Iceland. Also activity going over towards Europe, even through the Mideast and the West Pacific. Now, we have not seen another large earthquake in the 7.0 range since my last update. So we were talking about Mexico in the last update with the multiple sevens, a 7.6 and a 7.0, which they are still here on the feed if you haven't seen them. I'll just show them to you really quick. There we go. There's our big earthquake activity in Mexico from a few days back. Now, since then, a few things have happened. For instance, across Mexico going to the south over to the Caribbean, we saw a new spread of earthquakes go all the way over to the Caribbean. I'd like to open up a USGS plate boundary map and just show you what I'm talking about here going from Mexico down to the Caribbean. So here's Mexico. Here's the plate boundary. You see it there, Cocos Plate and the Pacific Plate over to the west. Now going over to the east, you see the red line goes over and bends over into the Caribbean. So when Mexico got hit, we talked about watching from Guatemala all the way over to Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and that's following the plate boundary. Look what's hit since. So since the big movement, we went right across it. We got a 5.1 over here, more rare in the West Caribbean off the coast of Belize and Honduras. And then going over to the east, we got a 4.3 to 4.5 next to Cuba, just north of Jamaica, and a huge outbreak of multiple earthquakes going up to near 4.0 all the way from Dominican Republic over to the east. If you add the earthquake activity from Cuba over to the east, we're getting to about an upper fours worth of energy. So I would say we're like at a 4.9 worth of release. I'm looking for one magnitude higher and for this to come in right in the middle in between all this activity, which now pretty much focuses us right in on Dominican Republic and Haiti. So previously I'd warned from Puerto Rico over to the east. I have to adjust that slightly to be just west of Puerto Rico. We'd still have to incorporate Puerto Rico in, but you can see where I'm talking about here, where all the sets of rings overlap. We have a bunch of threes on one side and a four over on the other north of Jamaica. Where the rings overlap, that's where I'm going to watch. So we are moving downstream, if you will. If you follow the arrows out of Mexico, we go down to Guatemala, which is right where our letter V is right here. And then we go over to the east. So I think that's, again, it's fairly obvious. It kind of speaks for itself. Fair amount of movement going on the plate boundary. One more time, let me show you the plate boundary going from Mexico over to the east. Now, if that was it, we could just say, okay, Mexico moved. But man, we're talking major planetary-wide movement on all sides. Now, we have deep earthquakes. Take a look at it. You see our deep earthquakes here. They're raised high off the globe for easy identification purposes. And the more deep earthquakes we have, the more tendency we have to have shallower, larger earthquakes come rolling in. And we have letter D's on the map where we look for new deep earthquakes to take place. Forecast area points. Anybody told you earthquakes can't be forecast is wrong. And we have a letter D here. These D's have been on the map for 9 years. We don't move them. We expect new deep earthquakes to happen in these locations. And here's our other letter D, and right next to it up on Japan mainland. All deep fours all the way around the entire West Pacific. Let me show you the plate boundary again here over in the West Pacific. So basically going from here at Fiji, over to the west at Indonesia, and up into Japan. Well, look where the earthquake is in Japan, the deep earthquake. Striking right on the H-shaped plate boundary. Right here, right next to it. And then down to the south, we're right at the S-shaped plate boundary here that goes around and kind of goes around through Indonesia there. Let me just back this out and show it to you. There you go. You can see it. The plate boundary makes an S shape there. So what's going on down below the West Pacific is the question. And then, of course, we can say, well, there's something's coming out from down below. It's pretty basic, right? Deep earthquakes down below. And then up above it, shallower, larger earthquakes. I still have a warning going in New Zealand for up to 5.2 on the North Island. Now we have threes all around it. Taupo volcano. Now, the professionals were talking about an earthquake swarm that was happening at Taupo, which has attracted my eye to it, which is why I issued the warning for that. Now, the earthquakes that struck to the west, 5.1 to 5.5, where did they strike? Take a look, guys. There are these red dots here on the map here. They're on the plate boundary again. So the reason I make such a big deal about the plate boundary is because earthquakes aren't randomly happening all over the planet. They're happening in succession of one another as something is spreading out following these red lines. The earthquakes are following the red lines, but something first is spreading out, which is causing the earthquakes to be equally spaced across a huge distance. And we can trace it back to where there's a hammering action coming up from down below, and then it goes out and away, following the breaks in between the plates. Over to the west we go, and lo and behold, we have the same sized earthquake, 5 to 5.1, striking right on the north side of Indonesia going into Philippines. Over to the west, 4.7 to 4.9, striking next to Java, Indonesia. 4.7 to 4.9 also going back up to the north, just north of Taiwan, right south of Okinawa in the Ryukyu Islands. Also another 4.9, striking north by northeast of Japan mainland, just north by northeast of the coast of Honshu, and another 4.8 to 4.9, but this one comes in to China, Russia. Let's see, who is this? Is this Russia or China? I think it's Russia. Yeah. Mgachi, Russia. Niet. How about another 4.8 to 4.9, striking over to the east at Kamchatka? That sure is a lot of 4.8 and 4.9 and going across a huge distance. And if you look at it, the spacing on this is actually somewhat good in between, that we're about the same distance in between each set of quakes. And I say about because we're going through a wave tank, if you will, that's not evenly shaped. So going from down here all the way to up here, we have the same size movement in a day. So really the way you should look at this, even though they're just 5s or 4.9s, that the entire area from Taiwan all the way up to Kamchatka moved in a day on a 5.0 basis, or very close to it. And then I would ask you, how much energy do you think it would take to displace the whole Northwest Pacific in a day on a 5.0 basis for 5,000 miles? And then, of course, the answer is a lot of energy, Dutch. It wouldn't just take a little bit. Each earthquake itself is equal to about a nuclear detonation, right? So if we're talking about multiples across thousands of miles, that's a lot of energy. And it doesn't stop at this 4.8. Look, we go over to the east and we have another 5.2, just like the other 5.1s and 5.2s over across down in the south and in the west. Again, 5.1 to 5.2 here over at Indonesia, 5.1 to 5.2 here at New Caledonia, at Solomon Islands, and then 5.1 to 5.2 right in the middle of the Aleutian Islands. That follows our 6 and our progression over to the east. Let's show you where the 6 was. 6 is marked in the dark red and big ring there. So clearly we're moving over to the east. The lighter colored earthquake is the one that struck today, and it's about 0.7 less than what struck over at Kamchatka. A little step down as the energy is going around the bend of the plate on the north side up here. Let's recap. 4.9, 4.9, 4.8, 4.8, 5.2. Going the other direction, 4.9, 4.9, 5.2, 5.2, and a 5.5. And going the other direction, 4.8, 4.9, and a 5.2. And I've got a warning going down in New Zealand for a 5.2 on top of the other 5.2, which previously struck. How many 5.2s is that? Well, we're not done yet. Let's jump across the Pacific. 5.2 on the coast of Mexico, 5.1 to 5.2 on the coast of Guatemala. Get all the other smallers out of there. We can show you everything 4.0 and greater. Doesn't matter. We're still dealing with the same freaking size earthquakes across the entire planet. We'll go all the way down here to the South Sandwich Islands, which was the topic of discussion in my last video. And now, take a look, 5 to 5.1. It actually came in at 5.2. Downgraded to 5, whatever. So there it is. Okay, so that's all the same size movement across the whole planet. The new white-colored earthquake struck in between our previous 6 and our previous 4s up to the north at the coast of Chile. See that? Halfway point between the two. Halfway point, again, between the 6 down to the south and the big cluster of pinkish-colored earthquakes to the north. Where the rings overlap, that's where the new earthquake struck. Tail end of it down here at the South Sandwich, let me show you on the USGS plate boundary map. I just showed you all the way from Kamchatka, all the way back down past Japan, all the way down to Indonesia, back over to Tonga, and back down to New Zealand with all that. Oh, and Alaska. All the same side movement, right? Over to the east, same thing going on. Look where South Sandwich is. Here's Antarctica, and we're at the bell end tip of the... I didn't draw that plate boundary, guys. That's the USGS. Go figure, right? So 5.1 to 5.2, whatever, 5-ish, striking down at the very tip over here. Now, what really happened was the flow went across, came down, and the stair-step fracture zone went down around and underneath, came up at the very tip of Antarctica, all the way over to the east and the Atlantic. Now, did I mention 4.9s? Sure did. 4.8s and 4.9s over on the other side of the planet, right? Check it out. 4.7 to 4.9 over here on the mid-Atlantic ridge. And I want to draw your eye to something I noticed about a few months ago that I can't believe it took me 15 years of looking at this to even catch. Coming off of Africa and going down this way, do you see the islands, the seamounts and volcanoes? They make a diagonal line towards the earthquake. And then look over here, over off the coast of South America. Well, I'll be. It's leading right over to it as well. So if you look this way, it's actually a connection point all the way across of undersea mounts. Now, if that was the only one, you might say it's coincidence, but look on down to the south. Check it out. There's another. Here, obviously, you can see it comes down, goes over to the mid-Atlantic, goes across, comes back over. Now, there's two of them, right? One on the north side goes right to the quake. One on the south side goes right across. Guess what? We had previous earthquakes right here where they meet. There's a third one down here. Coming off of South America, it's a little harder to see. It makes almost a straight line going over to the fracture zone, and the fracture zone connects across to Africa. Do you see it? Coming off of Africa, going across, follow the fracture zone across, goes across to South America, and they're connected by undersea mounts. So now there's three. And do you see it? It actually makes a bend down to the south as well. Maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. Let me zoom in. Goes down around and comes back up and goes over like a U. Do you see it? They're connected, undersea mounts, on all three sections. And that's where our earthquakes come across. Or go to the middle, I mean. So we have the same sized earthquakes on one side of the planet as we do on the other. And it keeps going on that way, which is starting to make me think that maybe there's something weird going on with this whole planet thing. Okay? That's why I've started looking into alternative explanations and alternative things and finding them. Because earthquakes going around half the planet doesn't make sense to me now that I think about it. Okay, now, we'll get an answer on that at some point. Going out from the West Pacific, we have the same sized earthquakes. In my last update, I talked about a 6.2 right there, right in the middle. Now look at it. 6.2 smack in the middle, and if you look all the way around it, 4.5s, 4.9s, going all the way down to the 5 down in the southwest Indian Ocean, down here. So this is the Indo-Australian plate. I show it all the time. India, Australia. Southwest side, 5.0. 4.9s over on the east side, and pretty quiet across Sumatra, going up into Myanmar now. A few days ago, it all got hit. But look who got hit since. You see this? So we have a 4.5 striking in Myanmar. I had somebody write me from India, Bangladesh area, and they asked me about the Ganges River Basin and Bangladesh and India and what to look for this week. And I told them, look, I think we're going to be getting hit over in Myanmar, and I think we're going to be getting hit North India going up towards Nepal, and that we'd get about the same sized earthquakes on both sides, and that they narrowly dodged the bullet, most likely, as it goes up and around the bend of the plate here. See my arrow there? We're going to go back over here and take a look. Do you see the plate boundary on the Indo-Australian plate? It goes the same way. Now, the reason we have arrows on there is because the earthquakes tend to flow out of the West Pacific and go over to the west. And when I say the earthquakes flow, I really should be saying the wave which causes the earthquakes flows. A very low frequency wave with peaks thousands of miles apart. Peaks or troughs, bottoms, or valleys or tops. I don't know where the earthquake is striking, whether it's at the top of the wave or the bottom, but the spacing is thousands of miles apart, and the wave tends to stay the same size within a hair of a point of itself all the way across the whole plate. So we get, in this case, 4.5s going around the entire outside edge of the Indo-Australian plate in a few hours' time. And over here we have 4.9s and 5.2s. Up here we have 4.9s and 5.2s with a 6 in the middle from a few days ago. And we go down here and we have 4.9s and 5.2s. So we jump across the plate and we have 4.9s and 5.2s. And I'm looking at everything 4.0 and greater. So it's the same size movement spreading out across both sides of the Pacific, out and away. So I still have a warning going in North India. Take a look where the rings overlap now for the earthquakes in North India. They come up here right next to the Nepal border on the northwest side. So my warning still stands for central India to north to the border of Nepal for 5.0 level activity to come in. Now, if it strikes just a little bit north, don't blame me. I mean, don't hate me for it. If it strikes just to the north, right up here at Kashmir, instead of down south in the plains, right here where it meets into the south side of the Himalayan range at Nepal. Again, we're talking about, I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles, and that's more like 400 miles away, but it is what it is. I mean, the warning that I issued for this was like several days ago. So anyway, here we are. It's moving all the way around the outside edge of the Indo-Australian plate from down here in the middle of the Indian Ocean, up past into Pakistan, over to the east and back down through Myanmar. Indisputable, that's what's happened in the past day and a half. So the whole Indo-Australian plate is moving on the north side, the northwest side, and the west side. Now down south, take a look. Down here, nothing, right? Well, I mean, if the whole north side's moved, the whole west side's moved, the whole northwest side moved, the whole east side's moved over to New Zealand, south side should move too. Hey, check it out, Dutch Sense logo. So let's watch from the Dutch Sense logo. Just over to the west, right in the middle of this. Let me show you here on this map. From the Dutch Sense logo right down here, over to the west. And this is more than a 200-mile stretch. But I would think that we'd be seeing something similar in size to what's going on around the rest of the plate. And that could be a 6 with 5s on either side. So it would be a 6 down here on the south side. Over to the west we go. Check off Iran if you were keeping track of areas where we warned. And we had warned central Iran right here at the divot in the plate on the plate boundary in Iran. And we warned you for the same sized earthquakes coming out of the West Pacific. So here we are at the plate divot in Iran down here. See this number 7 shaped bend in the plate? See that? That's called the Carlsberg Ridge. Goes up into Iran. Right here is where the quake struck. And boom. Now right next to this are a series of laccoliths, bulges in the plate, which I showed in my last update because of what I discovered next to Haiti. I discovered a giant bulging laccolith next to Haiti. Here, let me show you. Series of earthquakes started striking down here, and I zoomed in on it right here. Zoomed in on this, and you can see the ripples in this. This isn't from water. Do you see how that's shaped like that? And it's sort of shaped like that on the other side, but you see how this looks like it flowed out over time? Maybe I need to get it at an angle so you can see it. Again, this is off the coast of Haiti. A bunch of earthquakes striking here. Okay, now this is a bulging laccolith that at some point flowed a little bit, and I'll show you an example of one over in Iran that looks exactly the same. And we have another one in California, in the Valley of California, that looks similar. Okay, so here's the earthquake epicenter, and then what I'm talking about are all these. Do you see these? They're like somewhat round-shaped, but we'll show you one that's flowed out. Here, this just doesn't have trees on it, but it goes back up to the bulging laccolith point there, where it flowed out at some point in the past. Some of these flow out, others collapse. And the ones that collapse over here in Iran take a circular-like formation, but there's still some kind of magmatic content that's released. Let's wait for this to load so you can see it. And indisputable, right? Okay. And they go all the way down to the coast. And I could show you more examples, but the ripples are what I really want you to pay attention to on the flow of the laccolith. This one's a good example on this side. See that? Goes up to a bulge in the center. This is caused by bulging magma that comes up into the plate, but normally does not erupt. Okay, so getting back to it. Over in Haiti, there's one. Here we are in Iran on the plate boundary. Now, over to the west we go, and a few things have happened over the past several days. First of all, Italy got hit multiple times right on the plate boundary. Let me show you. 4.4, 4.6, and another 4.4. I warned Italy for this. It's been months since Italy has been hit with anything of any significance. And first spot to get hit was Norcia, Italy, right here on the warned area, Abruzzo range. I was 30 miles off, 31 miles away from where we warned, and it hit with 4.4. The next day, 2 4s struck up here on the north side of the plate boundary, which you don't see on the USGS site here, but you see them here. USGS reported. Then another 4.7 to 4.8 earthquake struck in South France, USGS ignoring the quake. I don't know why, but it struck in South France yesterday. It's not up for debate. You guys can go check it if you need to. So a 4.7 to 4.8 in South France, 4.6 and a 4.4 in North Italy, and a 4.4 in Central Italy. Check them all off the list. I warned all of them. South France, North Italy, Central Italy. And we warned them in that succession from Central Italy to North Italy to Central France. So they check them off in order. Now, what really happened? Energy came up the plate boundary, first struck at the plate boundary middle point here in Central Italy, then North Italy, then South France. Since then, a new outbreak has taken place over here on the mid-Atlantic ridge, going on both sides of Iceland, south of Svalbard and south of Iceland. Let's go out and look at the USGS plate boundary map one more time. We were looking for this to happen, for energy to go across North Europe, across the North Sea, go out up to the north. And that's exactly what's happened. Let's look at the smaller earthquakes. So, border of Poland and Germany. Also, border of Holland and Germany. And I saw that a series of earthquakes were reported in Holland, in the Netherlands, and the mainstream media was waiting. And they came out with a cover story. It was a 3.0 earthquake, or was it 2.9? But let's just call it a 3. A 3 hits in Groningen. Groningen? I can't say it proper. I don't speak Dutch. Anyway, the media comes out and blames it on gas pumping, and they call it normal, and that it's not an earthquake, it's just a gas pumping something or other. But then, a few hours later, after the mainstream media issued their little cover story that they were waiting to post, now you guys know I issued a warning for Holland this week, right? I don't do this hardly ever. Only when there's a push coming across Europe big do I warn Holland in the English Channel. Anyway, I warned Holland in the English Channel. Earthquake hits, they dismiss the quake and say it's a man-made quake. Don't worry about it, normal. A few hours later, multiple 2s hit right south of the Holland border in Germany at the East Eifel volcanic field. And, by the way, if you want to go over to my YouTube community page, you can see my posts on it, where I first made the post. Then the people come over and try to tell me that it's, the mainstream media has weighed in and said that it's nothing to worry about. But then here, a bunch of earthquakes strike over at the East Eifel volcanic field, just south of the Netherlands border, somewhere right down in here. I don't know the exact location where they struck, but it was just south of the border. And so while the Dutch were waiting to post a mainstream media disinfo story to dismiss the earthquake that they knew to look for, because I issued a warning for it, I'm serious now, that they came out with the cover story, then supernatural, whatever you want to call it, karma, then a bunch more earthquake activity strikes south of the border right at the volcanic field that they can't dismiss. And then they just shut up about it. They did. So, all right. What else is going on? Well, I don't know if the English Channel is going to be hit now. I would say that the chances of it are pretty unlikely since energy has flowed up to the north and out to the west. So it may very well be that 3.0 or 2s, whatever, that hit in Holland was it. And that we're not going to see the 4 out in the North Sea right off the shores of Holland here where the red arrow is. In case you don't know where Holland is, it's right here. Netherlands, whatever. And I had warned right here off the coast for a 4 to hit. And instead, a 3 hit, 2.8, and a bunch of other 2s. They dismiss one of them, and the others are at the volcano right to the south. It is what it is. Let's go. Speaking of agencies deleting stuff after I'm talking about it, I would like to just quickly show you guys something. Not related to earthquakes. I hope not related to earthquakes. Go over to my community page. Check this out. See this? Look on here. See, it says Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and look what's on there. Do you see that? That's a UFO. I don't believe in UFOs. If I do, well, I mean, I believe the military would have some. They have the TR-3B, this is real, okay? Now, this has been out for several days, and the mainstream media did a story on it, all right? That's how I found out about it. So I went to their website and clicked on it and took a screenshot of it to show my viewers. About an hour and a half after I took screenshots of it, posted to my viewers, I started getting messages like this down below the video, down below the post. People telling me that, well, here. Scroll down. Apparently, they just removed and redacted this logo in the last 12 hours. It's no longer on their website. Other people, it's not there anymore. I would like to share this information, but when I click on the link, that logo is not at the government website. Somebody accusing me of faking it. Fake. And I'm like, nope. I went to the web archive. You see, there's this thing called the internet and this thing called the web archive, and it crawls all new posts on the internet. And what you're going to see here as this loads is that earlier today, this is what was on the site. So people first tried to accuse me of, again, you can go back and read the comments. People accused me of faking it. Then people accused me of hacking it in there and saying that I inserted this in there in some kind of SS feed or something. And I'm like, no, this was on there until I shared it. Now, I don't believe in UFO aliens, but I do believe, and I've seen them myself, flying through space at the speed of meteorites, 7 of them in a formation that was more like a U.S. Navy squadron formation that you'd see flying through over the ocean or something. Instead, it was glowing, and it was up in space, and it was faster than meteorites. I saw it myself. August 3rd, 2011, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. off the front porch of my house in St. Louis. And I didn't think it was green men and aliens. I thought it was some kind of U.S. military because of the formation they were flying in. And it turned out I was right. So anyway, they have it on there, and then they took it down. So now when you go to their website, as soon as I shared it, within an hour of me sharing it, they changed it to this. And they said it was just a mistake that they put it up. I don't know. But if you read the comments down below, I tell everybody what it is. Or if you read my post. It was up for days. I shared it. They scrubbed the site. Guys, next card they're going to play. The fake alien invasion card. Bluebeam. Faking the alien invasion. Yeah. Anyway. Just thought I'd show you that. Speaking of deleting things. It's a perfect way to segue into the west coast of the United States, since they have it over here off the west coast where they supposedly identified the flying Tic Tac. But let's just go over and take a look and see what's happening. Oh, Northern California got hit by a 5 or a 4.8, depending on where you want to go with. And we can go look up the earthquake, go check the stations. I think the USGS may have even overestimated on this quake. I don't know. Let's go take a look at the stations and go see what they show. Let's see what local magnitudes show. Hold on. There we are. So local magnitude is a little less, but all the stations, we're going to throw out the high end, and we're going to throw out the low end. And low end is 4.3 and 4.4, 4.2. So low end 4s we're going to throw out, and mid-range 5s we're going to throw out. Okay, so we're going to throw out the 5.4. We'll throw out the 5.2. And there's still many 5s on the list. All right, now what does that mean? Well, it means I think they may have just gone a little bit under on the quake and took it from a 5 down to a 4.8 to 4.9. Now, there was another 4.8 to 4.9 that struck up here in Alaska. Now, the timing on this is almost perfect. This one struck at 1518 UTC on the 24th, 2 to 3 days ago. And this one struck at 1927 UTC on the 24th. So first this one, up in Alaska, then this one, down on the coast of California. So what does the coast of Alaska and the coast of California have in common? Let's go show you. Plate boundary again, the red lines. Up here in Alaska, look where the plate boundary goes. It goes up into the mainland and then goes across over into Canada and back down into the ocean. Now the other earthquake struck right down here where the Juan de Fuca comes in on the San Andreas. But these are the red lines of the plate boundaries. So we get a 4.8 up here. A few hours later, we get a 4.8 down here. Spacing is thousands of miles apart. This is, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. 1,500 to 1,800 miles if we go around the bend of the plate from where the earthquake is up here at Alaska, down here to California. So the spacing is 1,500 miles, let's just say. And what do you want to bet it's about the same from this 4.8 back to this 5.2? What do you want to bet it's about 1,500 or so? Let's just measure it. Let's see. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, it is. It's about 1,500 from here over to here, and about 1,500 from up here at the bend down to the Juan de Fuca. The spacing on this 1,500-mile long wave. Maybe it's 1,400. Maybe it's 1,400, like the island spaced across the Pacific, hashtag Tartaria. Now let's look at the United States smaller earthquakes really quick and just quickly try to figure out what's going on, what's going to happen next. So I'm looking in Southern California down in LA for the next 3 days. for a new near 5.0 earthquake to strike. Now, the untrained eye might even be able to make this out. Look at the 2.0 and greater quakes. Do you notice anything about them? Well, of course, they're making a diagonal line, and they're going all the way from the Juan de Fuca, leading all the way down to Southern California. This doesn't happen very much. Normally, we have a line of earthquakes that comes down the California coast, jumps across the valley, then carries on down south. But to get a straight diagonal line across the whole state of California in a day, this is 2 days. No, this is a day. So to get this in a day, I can only recall a few times that this has ever happened. This is the furthest most western edge of the coastal plain of the North American Craton. However, it is also the plate boundary. Let's go back and show you one more time. See how it goes through California? Now, all along the east side of the plate boundary, this has happened. And again, I don't have very many examples to go on this. Now, I'm going to turn it down to zeros and ones, and what you're going to see... Oh, hold on. Well, you can't really see it with all... Watch this. All the zeros and ones, look at that. Now, all of a sudden, we're going around California with a big ring of quakes that's then leading out over to the east and going over to the edge of the North American Craton, which goes over to Colorado and Texas and Oklahoma. Now, I have a warning going for Colorado. Hasn't been hit yet. It's going to be hit very soon. Should be going near 4.0. So it should get everybody's attention. Same with Texas. Hasn't happened yet, but all of California is moving. Now, when all of California moves, guess what happens? Big earthquakes. Bigger earthquakes. Bigger earthquakes than what are normally happening on a daily and weekly basis in California. So, maybe on a weekly basis, you might go up into the 4 range. Maybe. Some weeks you don't. Other weeks you do. But this would be going a whole step higher than that. This would be a sign that California is shifting. And how could we know that California is shifting? Well, a series of equally spaced earthquakes all the way from the Juan de Fuca up here that just had a 5, 4.8. And then all the way down. This is called the creeping section of the San Andreas, but I'd like to draw your attention to where the quakes jump off. We go down through the Bay Area. We go through the creeping section of the San Andreas, and then all of a sudden, we jump over to the valley and then down to the south tip of the valley. Well, guess what's right here? Not a volcano. It's a place called Kettleman City. The USGS has a lecture, which they have on their YouTube page, where a researcher did a series of studies across the San Joaquin Valley of California, from Kettleman City here all the way down to Bakersfield. Let me show you. From here down to here, across this way. And what she found is that this whole area from Kettleman City down to Bakersfield and south of the San Andreas is this diagonal line here, that all of this is severely subsiding. And for the USGS to ever use the word severe anything, unless it's just a megaquake, is very odd. So severe subsidence, what does that mean? Sinking. And not just a little bit, a couple feet, no, 40 feet, up to 40 feet, all the way around, the fields, the roads, the bridges, everything. In the last 50 years, sank up to 40 feet, and they blame it on loss of groundwater. Now, from Kettleman City down to Bakersfield. Well, guess what starts at Kettleman City, aside from groundwater pumping? The biggest oil pumping operations on the West Coast. Whole mountain ranges drilled out with oil wells. Oil and gas. So we're doing fracking in this case when we inject water down into the ground, which then breaks apart the shale. Let's wait for this to load. So you can see the shadow of the jack of the pump and the pipelines which connect between the pads. Now, there's like maybe 50 oil wells right there, right? You'd think, that's not that much. All of these are thousands of them, oil wells. They look like ants on the ground. It's just so many of them. It's not a jack or a pump storage yard. So we start here. We go down across this mountain range. And then once we get to right here, this place is called Missouri Triangle. And all of these are drilled. Now, this is the San Andreas. We've drilled up to the San Andreas all along it. All of this is drilled. Do you see them? Here, let me zoom in and show you. They look like ants on the ground. That's how many there are. That's not sagebrush on the ground, guys. These are oil wells. And we can do a ground level view to see off into the distance. They literally just go on and on. So this whole range here, Lost Hills, this whole range here, and then here's the San Andreas. Now, all of this is drilled. This whole mountain range here, do you see it? They look like sand dunes, but this is what it used to look like. Naturally speaking, I suppose. Used to look like this. And then they came in and they do all this. They scrape off each hilltop, and on the hilltop, they put multiple oil wells. And they did the whole mountain range that way. And all of this. Tens of thousands of wells going right up to, this is the San Andreas right here. Again, you can see it. Now they get really close to the San Andreas, even closer than here. Right down here. With all of these. And again, I'm sorry guys, I'm on a slower connection tonight, but okay, now, so a line of earthquakes jumps over to these right here. Jumps off the San Andreas, goes over to the drill points. Gee, go figure, right? But then we keep on this trajectory down to the east by southeast, because this wave that we're talking about here, think of it like this, that there's a wave coming in all the way across the West Pacific. It's dropping off noteworthy sized earthquakes all the way across. Once it gets here, it vibrates into the United States. It starts dropping off smaller earthquakes, but it's still going across the plate boundary, proving that the plate is now shifting in a way that we would need to watch in between all of this for a large earthquake to take place, or something significant. And when I say large for California, fives get news anchors diving under their desks and people freaking out. I don't know why. They're supposedly like earthquake veterans on the West Coast or whatever, but when a 5 hits, everybody goes ballistic. So when I say something bigger, it is bigger. It would be bigger than what everything else that's currently here on the map. And I have a warning going right down here in LA Basin. So LA Basin is not the middle of all this. LA Basin is on the south side of this shifting that's going on. So the shifting's going on. It's going all the way down here to South California. LA Basin is right basically where my mouse is. So I would call it a halfway point between the two sets of earthquakes here, but I'm not going to change it. If I would change it to the exact middle point, it would be from right here. So what is that? Southeast of Monterey Bay, from Parkfield, California, across over to Long Valley to the supervolcano. But I'm going to look on the south side still. I'm sticking to my guns on this. I still think we're going to break in LA, even though all of California is shifting right. Now, again, we're going on the edge of the craton. If you really want to talk about that we're on the edge of the craton, and the craton matters big time. So the craton is shifting, and that's going to catch up with us in a few days with earthquakes over to the east, and that gets us into Texas and the East Coast. Now, the East Coast started to move. People ask me if West Virginia got hit. No, West Virginia did not get hit this past week. Instead, a bunch of earthquakes or something started to happen in the Northeast from, let's just say, Massachusetts and Rhode Island all the way up, Rhode Island, not islands, Rhode Island, all the way up to Maine. And they only reported one earthquake. There were shake and felt reports going on for days. I don't know what's going on there, but I only go with the earthquakes which are reported. So what do we have? We have a 1.9 and a 1.8. Now, what's the halfway point between this 1.9 and this 1.8? What would you say if we just drew a line straight through them? It would put us somewhere right in here, wouldn't it? Right? Again, if we just do a straight line between them. Well, a straight line between them would put it right down here. What's this state called right here? Like right here? I believe that's called West Virginia. It is. So it's so weird, right? So we get earthquakes on the north side, earthquakes on the south side, and our exact middle point, not a single thing gets reported. There's no way to know, but a bunch of shake and felt reports going all the way up in the Northeast. Your guess is as good as mine, guys. Did it hit or not? If it hit, would we ever find out? Do you think they would tell us? So let's just say a 3 hit out in West Virginia, out in the middle of nowhere, and people feel shaking around the region, and they don't report the quake. How many times is that? I don't know. We're starting getting to too many times that this has happened. So let's recap. We're going through major activity, guys. We had multiple 7s. We have multiple new deep earthquakes. We've now leveled off for 3 days without any big earthquake activity. Or maybe there has been, it just hasn't been reported. But hiding a 7 is a little hard, I guess. It could be done, but it would take coordination between agencies and private seismographs and so forth. But so that being said, I think that we really have leveled off now, and we're going to wait and see what happens with these new deep earthquakes. Right now, we're spreading out with the potential of 7s, going all the way out in both directions. I would think that we're going to probably stay in the upper 6 level, though. Why is upper 6? That's already what struck over in Mexico 3 days ago. That's where we leveled out. It's just basic. When you see something level out, you see it go up into overdrive, and then it starts to plateau, and then we go quiet for a little while. Now, quiet for a little while can be deceiving. I don't want people to get lulled into a sense of security like we're done or something. No freaking way are we done. All of California just shifted. Alaska is now moving. The East Pacific is going to compensate, and the opposite side of whatever, flat Earth or round, opposite side of the planet is going to start compensating for what happened over the past week. We moved here this past week from north of New Zealand all the way across over into Indonesia and up to Taiwan. Devastating earthquakes, guys. I'm talking Taiwan was just wiped, not completely, but just destroyed right along where the earthquake struck. Same with over in Mexico on the opposite side of the plate over at the Pacific. So Mexico compensated, Taiwan compensated. We're now spreading further. I don't think we're done yet. I think we're at the upper 6 threshold, and it's going to be appropriate for me to get a new forecast out in about 2 to 3 days. Till then, all the original warnings from my past video from 3 days ago still stand, and several of them have already been checked off the list. I already named them for you in this update. So, for instance, like Holland and Iran, okay? All right, we're coming in a magnitude under in Holland and a magnitude under in Iran. That's good. On the west coast of the United States, perfect. There's only a few more spots to move. LA Basin. Last week was a bit of a strikeout for me. That was last week. So we could go into last week's misses if you really want to get into what didn't hit last week. But that was followed up this week with all these just spot-on locations getting hit, including Italy. Italy had been months in Italy and now in South France. And I am curious about why the USGS chose to ignore the 4 point whatever in South France, 4.7, when they're reporting 4.0s and 4 point whatevers across the rest of the planet. Somebody tried to tell me the USGS doesn't report under 4.0 internationally. That's not correct either. I've got examples of the USGS reporting 2s and 3s in Egypt, for instance. Just one example. I mean, the USGS reports stuff under 4.0 internationally. They cherry pick what they want to report. They're literally cherry picking earthquakes. I mean, imagine if I was doing that. If I was cherry picking quakes to show you instead of just showing you the whole feed. Anyway, do you have an earthquake plan? Time like now, where California is, the whole state is shifting. Everybody in California, oh yeah, we're earthquake veterans. Okay, earthquake veteran. You got your emergency kit dusted off? Do you have the appropriate supplies in there? What if the power gets knocked out for a few days? Food and water? Just the basics. You need to have that stuff met. Now, the water is pretty heavy carrying it around, but the food you could probably have met. Food might be getting it pretty expensive here pretty soon. All kinds of stuff are going on internationally, too. That's just nuts. And then, of course, there's a UFO stuff going on. I don't believe in that crap, but that means somebody's getting ready to play the UFO card. I'm my own card. I made a post on that over on my community page. So you guys know I'm my own Illuminati card. Dutch Sense. It's the hidden card. The one you couldn't find in the deck. The little blank place marker in the back. You should take a black light to it. It's actually, I'm sorry. Lemon ink. Like in National Treasure, you have to hold it up to a candle and show you the Dutch Sense name. Anyway, when I find this kind of stuff going on, I'm going to tell you whatever it is. If I find U.S. government got a saucer on their thing, I'm going to show it to you. Doesn't mean I believe in aliens. What I think is that along about the time of the 1940s, the Germans discovered electromagnetic flight. And electromagnetic flight working on the electromagnetic field lines of the Earth, basically. Maybe even like ley lines. But electromagnetic field for sure. And that they made craft that somehow are powered electromagnetically, that are opposite electromagnetic charge than what the Earth is. And that it could pull you along or push you away, depending on magnetism, at the speed of Earth's magnetism, which would be almost the speed of light. Now, they could be drone craft or whatever. I think they're flying them. I saw them myself. I'll just tell you one more time. I saw them myself. Front porch of my house, August 3rd, 2011, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m., facing south, coming from the direction of a full moon, and I saw them in the speed of the blink of an eye. And it took me minutes afterwards to count how many I saw, because that's how fast they were. They were faster than meteors. I've seen meteors as fast as the fastest little streaking meteor that you could think of across the sky. I saw them myself, but they were in a formation of like the U.S. Navy would fly. And it dawned on me all the way back then that it was military. And when they were doing the nuclear research, Manhattan Project and so forth, they were also doing the microwave research, and they were using electromagnetism. And they may have figured that out all the way back then. And of course, it would be next generation, and we would have fleets of these things at this point. And the space thing could be flying to the moon in a matter of hours, and the whole thing's a front. The space program, which we already know. And fake, in other words. But I saw them myself years ago. And people tried to tell me they were aliens. I'm like, yeah, right. I don't believe in that kind of crap. Why would they fly in a U.S. Navy formation? Seriously, it's like watching the Blue Angels fly over, but it's UFOs. So when this kind of stuff happens, and then they delete it and say it's a mistake, and then accuse me of faking it and hacking it, accuse me of faking it and hacking it. Seriously, go read the comments. Accuse me of faking it and hacking it. It's all over the mainstream media. This was all over the mainstream media. And they left it up and everything. It was fine until I shared it. 2 hours after I shared it, they deleted it. It is what it is. Oh, you don't see it, but one more time. One more time. This UFO crap right here. I don't believe in green men and aliens, but I do believe that the U.S. military would have advanced technology, electromagnetic, that could fly at almost the speed of light, and that's why they don't care about jets in Russia and all of a sudden China and all this other stuff, or nukes or any of it. That we'd have something that's faster than all of it that could totally take out nukes, take out jets, take out everything, and we probably have a fleet of them, and we're letting everybody know finally. It would explain why they're off the west coast of San Diego. They'd be coming from the Marine base or the Edwards Air Force Base or somewhere down there. Coming out of Area 51. It makes more sense now. It really does. But hiding it, it's like hiding earthquakes. Whoops, wrong button. It's suspect. So let's go ahead and save this as a video. It's going to be interesting to watch. 47 minutes long, me talking earthquakes and a few UFOs now. Man, I already did Star Force. What do you want me to do? I'm like the next Sheila Aliens. She's going to love that. What's up, Sheila? I got to get the burning snow, The snow's on fire. All right, long story on that. Hey, guess what? Good news, guys. You survived September 24th, which is better than surviving September 23rd. Hey, I'm going to make some shirts that say, I survived September 24th, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. I previously had the I survived September 23rd shirts from back in 2015. Those sold pretty good, so yeah. I survived September 24th, 2022, and all I got was this lousy shirt. Have a good afternoon, morning, evening, night, guys. Look out for this on YouTube within about an hour. Peace out.